Hello everyone, welcome to episode 4 of Gypsy Jazz Profiles. This episode was recorded in the US in Brooklyn, New York, and my guest is Cavanaugh. He's an amazing banjo player and one of the very few who have ventured into playing jazz on the 5-string banjo. I hope you'll enjoy it, and please subscribe to my channel for much more to come.
I grew up listening to my father play banjo, and I really liked it right away. I enjoyed listening to him play. I liked listening to the fast bluegrass music that he played on the radio, and I kind of followed in his footsteps. He showed me some of the banjo, played me a lot of records, and at the same time, he was playing bebop on his stereo too, so both of those musics soaked in. I associated the bluegrass music with the South and the jazz music with New York City. So somehow I wanted to bring those together. In my mind, early on in playing, I wanted to mix those two musics, and break the stereotype that the banjo has, for being like farmer music or, country music in general. I wanted to make an art project in my head where I fused those two types of music to be very creative on their own. When I was 3 or 4 years into playing the banjo, my father bought me an electric guitar. He bought me a Fender Stratocaster, and I wanted some fancier kind of guitar to play heavy metal on. But my father brought home this Stratocaster. He said, "I'd like you to learn how to play blues on this Fender Stratocaster, so you can talk about other types of music besides bluegrass." So he gave me a B.B. King CD and a Stevie Ray Vaughan CD, and I started learning these licks from these players. And he said, "I'd like you to transcribe these to banjo so you can learn where blues comes from in bluegrass." And it was very hard at first, but once I figured out a way to integrate this music under my fingers on the banjo, my next question was, what about bebop? What about jazz? How do I learn this? And my banjo teacher at the time told me that I should learn how to read music. So this was a huge endeavor, coming from tablature to learning my notes on the banjo and how to read music. So I had a book called, I think it was called Speed Mechanics for Heavy Metal Guitar, or Speed Lead for Heavy Metal Guitar by Troy Statina. And I started doing finger exercises that they have you do for shred metal guitar, right? So I thought, if I can do anything now, I can prepare my hands to do all the work. And at the end of that book, there was a version of Rimsky-Korsakov's Flight of the Bumblebee. And I transcribed this into notation from the guitar tablature. And then I transcribed that notation into banjo tablature, so I could read the banjo tablature and the notes above it. After that, my high school music teacher recommended Jerry Coker's Improvising Jazz, and I started doing the work out of that book, and the rest is history. I've been transcribing and reading and Charlie Parker omnibooking ever since, trying to keep my chops up and learn the language of bebop. I grew up listening to my father's record collection, of course, which had Django in it. But my closest connection to gypsy jazz music is when I took a gig with a Dixieland jazz band while I was in college. And I was learning bebop, and I wanted to further my jazz education, so these guys hired me to play banjo, and they didn't want me playing with 3 fingers. They wanted me playing with a flat pick and strumming the right chords that a tenor banjo player would. So we played all these songs: Minor Swing, Tiger Rag, Sweet Georgia Brown, Avalon, all of these, standards that I'm sure are gypsy jazz standards. And I learned a lot about the history of jazz through that. Here I was playing the banjo, which came before Django Reinhardt ever came on the scene in US jazz, like in the 20s or 30s, I assume. And I was thinking, wow, this is what Django had to have heard when he was inventing his style of guitar. I mean, he had to have listened to American Dixieland and Louis Armstrong with Johnny St. Cyr playing the banjo. And so that's my closest connection to Django Reinhardt. My three-finger banjo style came out of necessity. And I was transcribing Flight of the Bumblebee at the time. And it was the only logical way to do it. And I started playing it with two fingers, thumb index, like you would do on a guitar. But the notes weren't coming out fast enough and they were coming out too staccato, ticka-ticka, and like real, I wasn't getting the feeling out of the music. Not that that's a song with much feeling in it because it's supposed to sound like a B. But what I did was incorporate my middle finger with my thumb and index, sort of like classical style guitar. And it's developed over the years with more transcribing and more music that I've had to learn for other bands into a very fluid thing for me now. Many things on the banjo are in store for me. I don't really have a set plan. Life just comes at me and music comes out of me and out of necessity sometimes and sometimes out of leisure. I'm very conflicted at times because of the bluegrass and the jazz side of me. I play jazz for my enjoyment, to keep learning. I like to constantly learn, even if it's something small that I practice for a long time that grows and branches out. I'm just gonna keep doing my thing, pushing forward, learning jazz on the banjo, trying to create creative bluegrass from it, expressive music. John McLaughlin said to me once, "What kind of music have you been inventing, Ryan?" So I'm kind of going to listen to what he says and just kind of keep inventing my own thing, developing my technique, and trying to play expressive and mostly, I want to play artistic music on the banjo. I want to make nice, beautiful sounding art with the banjo.